thinking about events, we are planning to be at Rhinebeck, getting excited for that. And then you were at an event earlier this summer that you really enjoyed.
Yes.
And it's fun to be getting out there more. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I was asked to come to Kitchener-Waterloo, specifically to Kitchener, but Kitchener-Waterloo and Cambridge are a couple of towns in Ontario. They're quite close together. And Kitchener-Waterloo has a super active Knitters Guild. One of the most active and engaged, I think, in the country, if not in North America. They are renowned. And every other year they do an adjudicated show. So if you've never heard that term before, and as far as knitting goes, basically means their members can submit their work, their knitted work, to the guild, and someone comes in and judges it.
Which is quite common at a number of agricultural fairs
yes.
as well,
So,
I've come to realize.
Yes, so often fairs have this, and it usually grew out of like the animals, and then it got expanded out to like the best jam, the best pie, the best spinning.
I grew up with this as a Women's Institute thing.
Yes. So, but in this case, it's totally separated out from that idea, and it's just about the knitting and the knitters. And so the guild invited me to come and be the adjudicator for the 2023 show. And so I took the train and I went out and I got to hang out with Jen, who is the show coordinator for this year. Also, they're all volunteers that run all of this, and people take on different roles each year. And I looked at 143 pieces of knitting in 24 hours and had volunteers helping me take notes on everything that I saw, and then getting to choose winners in each category, first, second, third, sometimes even fourth place if it was a big category. Anyway, the upshot is, what was incredible was getting to see real finished knits in this huge range of yarns and this huge range of patterns. Like, I think sometimes, it makes sense. We're like in this world where we see the influencers, right? Like, we talk about Stephen West a lot. We talk about Andrea Mowry a lot. These are big figures in our world, and they're amazing.
A lot of people come across their patterns because they are in the hot right now on Ravelry. Like, Andrea Mowry recently had a sale, and all of her patterns dominated. And like, with reason, as I've talked about, her patterns are very well written and fit super well. But it is fascinating, and we do see a bit of this as store owners too, to see what people who aren't always plugged on Instagram and plugged in and thinking about it from a career, from like our job perspective and our industry perspective, because it's really exciting to keep up on top of what's relevant, and we need to, because that's what a lot of our customers are knitting. We need to know what patterns are new, because when our customers come say I don't know the name, but it's the latest one from so and so.
Yeah,
like, it's good to know that. But then, like, this was a 3-year-old pattern, and I felt like I was stepping back a little bit, but I just loved.
But what's wild is, like, in these 143 items, there were things from probably booklets that were under someone's couch or were found at a thrift store. There was stuff in yarns that had probably been in stash for 10, 20 years, discontinued. I've never seen it. But then there also was like 15 Stephen West shawls from all of his knit-alongs, and getting to see that all together of all these different examples of the way that the knitter had changed or customized or chosen this color or made this little element change. There was just something so inspiring and down to earth about it, and this real sense, a huge range of skill level. I mean, there's this designer who's based out of there, Mary W. Martin is her name, inventing new knitting techniques, getting to see her work, but also she's teaching her guild members. They're submitting stuff that they've knit from her patterns. Anyway, it was incredible. It was such an honor to go out there, and it really inspired me to put the Instagram down for a second and think about sort of the bigger picture of knitting and how broad that is and how different it is, and crochet as well, and people making toys, all kinds of incredible stuff. It was fabulous. It was what I did on my summer vacation.
Yeah, it's just an incredible perspective to rethink what is possible, what is fresh, and what we actually want to be knitting. And I felt the same way. We had a donation to the store of a bunch of old knitting magazines. We put them outside for people to take, and just flipping through those and seeing what's come around again. I was back in England in June, and my great auntie Jean had left so many piles of knitting patterns that my mum and my granny keep, and I was going through them, and I found the pattern for a cardigan that my granny passed to me, and I'm like, I could make this, but I already have this one passed to me that is just so impeccably perfect that I'm not going to bother trying. But there's just, like, there's there's just so much out there
Yes.
that comes back around again, and that you can make your own.
Well, and it's interesting because like sometimes when someone comes in with something really very old, like these sort of stapled booklet patterns, there can be sort of a moment of panic, like that yarn is discontinued almost always, and like that there's not going to be a lot of information in that booklet about what that yarn was. And luckily there is Ravelry, there's the database, there's yarnsub.com, there's different ways to find out. But it really, like, it's this sort of this perspective, like those patterns, other than the photography and the styling, it's all still the same vibes. Like you see the same, like those magazines that you were talking about.
Yeah.
You flip through them and it's like, oh wow, like that's very now. All you have to do is change the hairstyle.
Absolutely.
And the style of the photography, and that could come out tomorrow and I'd be like, wow, amazing, original. I've never seen anything like it. It's
on the flip side, as a store owner, like I am aware that what we make, we talk about, and you lot are, kind enough to be inspired by it, or like to be interested in it, and then we have to have the information. Like a lot of those patterns, they came in 3 sizes, 32, 36, and 38, and then it stopped. Or again, it's a really bare bones pattern, like a cable pattern with no charts, because chart software didn't exist yet to put an image. There are hand-drawn little charts that have been pasted in and Xeroxed in these patterns.
My favorite, the reverse shapings.
Yeah.
The Rowan loves to just tell you how to make the right side and doesn't tell you how to make the left. And you're just like, you figure it out.
And that's what people did. And, a lot of these patterns, again, that I have passed down to me, like the sizes as written wouldn't have fit the woman who I know owned the patterns. And,
they did all those
They
mods.
just did all those mods. And it's really great now that patterns don't make you do that. But it does make it trickier when I'm thinking about knitting from them.
Yeah, but I think it also, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like, oh, let's all vintage all the time.
Yeah.
But it really does make me aware of like how old this is as an art form and how far back it goes, but also that there is this sort of like, there's a great forgetting, I think, that can happen too, because we are this niche world. These little booklets and magazines that end up in thrift shops or in someone's basement. Ravelry is only 25, 30 years old, like
if that,
and some vintage stuff is represented there, but not all of it. There's all this, like, there's just hundreds of years of knitting that isn't necessarily visible on the surface.
Yeah, and a lot of it required very different skills from what we're used to employing now, and the standards of pattern writing are very different. And I would but like need a lot of focus to follow some of those patterns, and like a little bit of trial and error, and the finishing techniques aren't mentioned, but that's because you could do anything you wanted on them. It's not like there are any sort of answers to any of these questions. It's just something I really like musing over and considering, and
I don't know, sometimes I think about
talking about.
Yeah, in terms of like, like old records too, right? That maybe like a forgotten chart hit, or it didn't end up on Spotify. It's like it could disappear.
Yeah.
That physical media thing as well, right? Where it's just there was an element of that to going into doing this work in Kitchener, was really seeing the different layers and the depth of like what this art form or this craft is, and also who participates in it and how they access it is so much bigger than Instagram, YouTube, all of this stuff, which is so important. And I'm not saying don't do it, but it was a good, refreshing eye-opener.
Yeah. That it's not the only source. It's an incredible, like the internet is an incredible resource for knitters. It's a reason why knitting is what it is today. Like there was definitely a dip in knitting in the 90s, and Ravelry has played a huge part in that, but so have blogs. Like before Ravelry, like the blogging world, like those magazines that kept going, the new publications, and, absolutely, like that mid 2010s like generation, or mid 2000s generation of new publications, and then Instagram and also YouTube. That means like yarn stores can exist in this way again. So I mean, this is absolutely not to like downplay the importance or the relevance or the interest and inspiration of the internet and social media in knitting. It's just it's a thrill to go back to those magazines. And
yeah. Just realize
little,
that we are connected in this into a longer story.
These little like thrilling pops of like familiarity when you look through these magazines, and it's like, especially the summer tops that are coming back. It's like, that tank could have been published yesterday.
Yeah.
And
been a hit.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, so that's
some
musings.
It's not a Steph and Naomi podcast without a little bit of a
off-topic musing.
Yeah,
absolutely. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us and letting us muse. And we'll see you again soon with new projects and new yarns.